My name is Aurora Ellis. I am 32 years old. Back when I still trusted him completely, my husband Elijah sat me down one ordinary afternoon and claimed I was too fragile and forgetful to manage our joint savings of $75,000 or make any decisions about my career, insisting the unexplained withdrawals were my doing due to anxiety I did not even know I had. He convinced my mother-in-law and my father-in-law that I needed their oversight before I destroyed our marriage. That betrayal left me isolated and doubting myself for years. Now, here I sit in a mediator's office in Milwaukee with documents exposing his secret transfers to help his brother. His smug look across the table tells me this fight is far from over. I refuse to let my husband control my autonomy any longer. If you have ever had your partner slowly erode your confidence to keep you dependent, tell me in the comments what that felt like for you. I read every single one. I still remember the first time my husband made me question my own memory. We had been married 4 years then, living in a modest 2-bedroom house on the south side of Milwaukee. I worked as an office manager at a mid-sized logistics firm downtown, the kind of job that let me pay my half of the bills and still have a little left over for the savings account I kept dreaming about using for a down payment on something bigger someday. My husband worked in construction management with long hours and good pay, but he always made sure I knew how lucky I was that he handled the big picture stuff. It started small. One evening, after a long day, I came home and mentioned a promotion opportunity that would mean occasional travel to Chicago for client meetings. Nothing crazy, just 2 nights a month at most. My husband looked up from his phone with that calm smile and said, "You sure you are ready for that kind of pressure, Aurora? Last time you tried something new, you forgot to pay the electric bill and we almost lost power. Remember?" I blinked because I had paid the bill and remembered the confirmation email, but he shook his head slowly like he was disappointed and added, "It is okay. Some people just are not built for extra responsibility. That is why you have me." The next morning, my mother-in-law called. She never called me directly unless my husband had primed her first. "Your husband mentioned you are thinking of traveling for work," she said, voice dripping with concern. "Is everything all right at home? Your father-in-law and I worry when you take on too much." My father-in-law chimed in on speakerphone. "Elijah is a good man for looking out for you like this. Not every wife has that kind of support." I hung up feeling like I had been caught doing something wrong. That was my husband's pattern. He never raised his voice. He planted the seed, watered it with concern, and let his family do the rest. My best friend, Willow Gomez, noticed it before I did. Willow and I had been close since college. She worked as a senior customer success specialist at the same logistics firm. One Friday after work, we grabbed drinks at a quiet bar near the lakefront. I told her about the promotion conversation and how my husband had framed it as me being fragile. Willow set her glass down hard. "Aurora, that is not normal. He has been doing this for months, twisting every little thing so you second guess yourself." I laughed it off at the time because admitting it felt scarier than ignoring it. But the pattern kept growing. Small violations piled up. My husband would helpfully remind me in front of his brother that I had forgotten where I put my keys again, or that I had mixed up the date of his mother's birthday. His brother would chuckle and say, "Good thing my brother keeps track of everything for you." Then came the money. I started noticing small transfers from our joint account that I had not authorized. When I asked my husband about them, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and gave me that patient, pitying look. See, this is exactly what I mean. You do not even remember authorizing those payments to my brother for the truck repair last month? I showed you the receipts. Maybe we should have the family lawyer look at a conservatorship or something, just to protect you from yourself. The fact that my husband threw the lawyer's name out so casually sent ice down my spine. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while my husband slept beside me, completely at peace. The next day, I quietly opened a separate account at a different bank and started moving a little money each paycheck. Not much, just enough to feel like I still existed outside his control. 2 weeks later, my husband came home early, found the new account statements I had hidden in my work bag, and sat me down at the kitchen table. His voice stayed soft, almost gentle, but the words cut deep. "Aurora, hiding money from your own husband. That is what people do when they are planning to leave. Is that what you are doing? Planning to abandon me the way you abandon every responsibility that gets hard? I felt my face heat up. I was not hiding it. I just wanted something that was mine. He laughed short and sharp, something that was yours. Everything we have is ours. Or at least it was until you started acting like a stranger in your own house. My mother thinks you might need to talk to someone professional. She already made the first appointment for you. That was the moment I realized how deep the web went. My mother-in-law had already scheduled therapy for me without asking. My father-in-law had apparently told my husband that if I kept forgetting things, they might need to step in legally. And my brother-in-law had been the one receiving the secret transfers all along. I started keeping records of every conversation, every helpful reminder, every time my husband initiated a comment that made me feel small. I told Willow everything one rainy afternoon in her apartment. She listened without interrupting, then said quietly, "Aurora, this is not love. This is control. You need to talk to someone who is not on his side, at least get a second opinion." I nodded, but I was scared. Leaving felt impossible when every exit route had my husband's voice already waiting to call me crazy. Last month, the final small violation pushed me over the edge. I had landed a major project at work that would mean leading a team for the first time. My boss, Maya Morales, pulled me aside and said the client specifically requested me because of how organized I was. I came home excited for the first time in months. My husband was waiting in the living room with his parents on video call. Before I could even share the good news, he spoke first. "Congratulations on the new project, I guess," he said, voice dripping with that familiar sarcasm. "Though I am not sure how you are going to manage leading a whole team when you cannot even remember to pick up the dry cleaning like I asked 3 times this week. My father thinks you should consider stepping back. Family comes first, right?" My mother-in-law's voice crackled through the speaker. "Your husband is only saying this because he loves you, dear. Some women just are not cut out for that level of stress." I stood there frozen while my husband smiled like he had won. That night, I made the appointment with the family lawyer myself. I told him I needed to understand what my rights were if I ever decided to separate our finances. He listened carefully, asked for copies of the statements I had saved, and said he would start quietly reviewing everything. 2 days ago, the lawyer called me at work. His voice was low. "Aurora, we need to meet in person. Today, I found something that changes the entire picture. Bring anyone you trust." I brought Willow. We sat in the mediator's office this morning while the lawyer laid out the papers. Bank records showing transfers to my brother-in-law that my husband had authorized using my digital signature without telling me. Emails between my husband and his brother joking about how easy it was to keep me in check. Screenshots of texts where my husband told my mother-in-law I was slipping again and needed the family to tighten the reins. My husband walked in 10 minutes late, flanked by his parents. He saw the documents spread across the table and did not even flinch. Instead, he looked straight at me with that same calm, cutting smile and said, "So this is how you thank me for protecting you all these years by dragging my family into a lawyer's office like some kind of victim." The words hung in the air like smoke. Then my phone buzzed on the table. A text from an unknown number. I opened it under the table while everyone watched me. The message was short. "You think those records are bad? Wait until you see what he sent me last night about you." It was from my brother-in-law. I looked up and met my husband's eyes. For the first time in years, I did not look away first. The mediator's office felt smaller as my husband leaned forward and broke the silence with that familiar, calm voice that always hid the blade. "So this is how you thank me for protecting you all these years, by dragging my family into a lawyer's office like some kind of victim. You are really going to sit here and pretend those transfers were not your idea. I showed you the receipts months ago. Or did you forget that too?" My mother-in-law shifted in her seat, but she did not speak first. My father-in-law cleared his throat, waiting for my husband to lead. My brother-in-law sat there beside my husband with a blank face, letting him carry the weight of the attack. The lawyer slid another folder across the table before I could answer. Mr. Ellis, the records show the signatures were forged using Aurora's login credentials. The timestamps place the transfers during her work hours when she was logged into the office system. We have server logs proving she was in meetings at those exact times. My husband did not miss a beat. He laughed short and sharp, the sound cutting through the room. Server logs. Really, you are going to let your best friend and this lawyer convince you I am the villain here? Willow has always been jealous of what we have. This is exactly why I told my father we needed to limit your access months ago. You are spiraling, Aurora. Hiding money, accusing me of forgery, dragging us all here like we are the criminals. What happened to the woman I married who knew her place? My father-in-law finally spoke, but only after my husband gave him the opening. Your husband is right, dear. We have seen this before. Remember when you forgot the mortgage payment 2 years ago? He covered for you then too. I wanted to scream that I had not forgotten it, that my husband had changed the due date without telling me, but the pattern was so deep, it felt pointless. Instead, I focused on the lawyer. What are my options if I want to separate the finances completely? Before the lawyer could answer, my husband's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked straight at me with fresh triumph. Too late for that conversation. I already filed the paperwork this morning with the court for a temporary order. My mother witnessed it. You cannot just walk away from our joint life because you are having one of your episodes. The room went still. Willow gasped softly beside me. My husband had initiated the legal move without a single warning, using the very system he claimed was protecting me. The mediator cleared her throat, but my husband spoke over her, his voice dropping to that low, cutting register that always made me feel small. Come home tonight, Aurora. We can drop this nonsense and pretend none of it happened. Or keep pushing and watch how fast the family choose the side that is actually stable. I did not answer. My phone buzzed again under the table, another message from an unknown number. This one had an attachment. It was a screenshot of a text thread between my husband and my brother-in-law from last week. She is getting too independent again. Time to remind her who holds the cards. Followed by my husband's reply, already handled the conservatorship filing. She will thank me later when she realizes she cannot function without us. My hands started shaking. I slid the phone to the lawyer under the table. He read it, his expression hardening. Mr. Ellis, this new evidence just changed everything. We will need to address this in the next session. My husband stood up suddenly, chair scraping loud enough to make everyone flinch. Evidence. You are manufacturing drama now. Fine. Stay here and play your games, Aurora. But when you come crawling back, because your little rebellion costs you your job and your reputation, remember who warned you first. He looked at his parents and my brother-in-law. Let us go. She needs space to think about what she is throwing away. They filed out my mother-in-law, shooting me one last disappointed glance that my husband had clearly scripted. The door clicked shut and the mediator exhaled. Take some time, Mrs. Ellis. This is escalating faster than I expected. Willow drove me back to her apartment after the meeting ended. We sat at her kitchen counter with coffee neither of us drank. He is not going to stop, she said quietly. That conservatorship filing is real. The lawyer said he can fight it, but it means court dates, more money, more public records. Your husband is banking on you folding under the pressure like you always have. I stared at my phone. Another text had come through while we drove, this one from my boss, Maya Morales. Aurora, your husband, called the office this afternoon. He expressed concern about your mental state affecting the new project. I need you to come in tomorrow and assure the team everything is fine. We cannot have distractions right now. My husband had reached into my work life too, initiating the sabotage exactly the way he always did, with concern wrapped around a threat. Willow saw the message and shook her head. This is getting dangerous. You need to stay here tonight. Do not go home. I agreed, but the weight of it pressed down harder than ever. For 4 years, my husband had chipped away at my autonomy, one sarcastic comment, one forged signature, one concerned phone call at a time. Now the walls were closing in faster than I could push back. The next morning, I went to work anyway, determined to prove I could still function. My boss, Maya, pulled me into her office before the team meeting. Your husband stopped by the front desk yesterday afternoon, she said, voice careful. He asked if we had noticed any changes in your performance lately. Said he was worried about your memory issues impacting client deliverables. I told him, we are happy with your work, but Aurora, this puts me in a tough spot. If he keeps calling, I have to document it. I felt the familiar fog of doubt creeping in, the one my husband always manufactured so expertly. But this time, I pushed back. He does not speak for me. The project is on track. My boss nodded, but her eyes said she was already calculating risks. I spent the rest of the day buried in emails, trying to pretend my life was not unraveling in real time. At lunch, Willow met me in the parking lot with more documents the lawyer had overnighted. He found 2 more accounts your husband opened in your name last year. Small ones, but the pattern is there. He has been siphoning tiny amounts for years, always blaming you when questions came up. I flipped through the pages, heart pounding. My husband had been playing this game far longer than I realized, initiating every financial move while painting me as the unreliable one. That evening, my phone rang as I left the office. It was my father-in-law. Aurora, your husband asked me to call. He is worried sick. Come to dinner at our house tonight. We can talk this through as a family. Your husband says if you refuse, he will have no choice but to move forward with the conservatorship hearing next week. My husband was using his father as the messenger now, but the words were pure, my husband. I told my father-in-law I needed time and hung up. Willow was waiting in her car across the street. You are not going, she said firmly. Stay with me. The lawyer has a plan to file for separate maintenance tomorrow. I climbed in exhaustion, settling into my bones. We were halfway to Willow's apartment when my phone lit up with a new message from my husband himself. You have 24 hours to come home and drop the lawyer nonsense. If you do not, my mother will testify that you have been unstable for years. The judge will believe her. And Aurora, I still love you enough to forgive this little rebellion. Do not make me prove how far I will go to keep our family intact. I read the words twice the threat crystal clear. My husband had just drawn the final line initiating the ultimatum that would decide everything. But before I could reply, another text came through from an unknown number. This one had no words, just a single photo attachment. It was a screenshot of my personnel file at work, marked with a note in my boss's handwriting. Monitor for performance issues per husband's concern. My husband had escalated even further while I was still deciding what to do. The next 48 hours blurred into a nightmare of paperwork and quiet dread. I stayed at Willow's sleeping on her couch with my phone on silent. Every notification felt like another landmine my husband had planted. He texted me at midnight, initiating the pressure exactly the way he always did, soft words wrapped around steel. I know you are scared, Aurora. That is why I filed the conservatorship. Come home tomorrow and we drop everything. My mother and father are waiting to welcome you back, like none of this happened. Do not force me to show the judge how fragile you really are. I did not answer. The silence felt like the only power I still had. The emergency hearing was set for the following afternoon. The lawyer met me outside the courthouse in downtown Milwaukee, his face grim. Your husband showed up early with his whole family. He is already talking to the clerk like this is a done deal. Stay calm in there. Let me speak first. We walked into the small courtroom, and there he was, my husband, Elijah, seated at the table with my mother-in-law on one side and my father-in-law on the other. My brother-in-law sat directly behind them, arms crossed, watching me like I was the intruder. My husband looked up the moment I entered and smiled that same calm, cutting smile. There she is, he said loud enough for the judge to hear. My wife who decided to hide money and accuse me of forgery instead of coming home like a normal person. I only filed this to protect her from herself, Your Honor. She has been forgetting things for years. The judge called the session to order, but my husband was not finished initiating the attack. He leaned forward before the lawyer could speak and added, she even dragged her best friend into this mess. Willow has been feeding her these paranoid ideas. Ask my mother. She has seen Aurora spiral before. My mother-in-law nodded right on cue. It is true, your husband has been carrying this marriage on his back for 4 years. The poor girl just is not equipped for real responsibility. I sat there listening to them dismantle me piece by piece, each word from my husband landing like a precise jab designed to make me doubt I deserve to exist outside his control. The lawyer fought back with the records, the forged signatures, the texts. The judge looked increasingly uncomfortable, but he did not rule immediately. Instead, he ordered a 2-week continuance and temporary separate maintenance so I could keep my paycheck. As we left the courtroom, my husband blocked my path in the hallway. His voice dropped low just for me, sharp and personal. You think this is winning Aurora 2 weeks. By then, my mother will have spoken to your boss again. Your boss already told me she is concerned about team morale. Keep pushing and you will lose that job too. Then where will you go? Back to your best friend's couch forever. I still love you enough to take you back. Do not make me prove how alone you will be without me. I stepped around him without answering. Willow was waiting at the end of the hall. She drove me straight to my office because I refused to hide anymore. My boss pulled me aside the moment I walked in. Your husband called me again this morning, she said quietly. He said the court thing is because you are having a breakdown. I told him to stop contacting me, but Aurora, this is affecting your performance review. The client project is still yours for now, but I need you focused. No more drama. The words stung because I knew my husband had initiated them, deliberately turning my safe place into another battlefield. I worked late that night, pouring everything into the project just to prove I could. When I finally left the building, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Another photo. This one was a screenshot of an email my husband had sent to my company's human resources department that afternoon. It detailed my supposed memory issues and suggested they consider a leave of absence for my own good. The sender line showed it had been forwarded from my mother-in-law's account. He had looped in his entire family to sabotage my career while I was still in the courthouse. I showed the email to the lawyer the next morning. He filed an additional harassment claim that same day. The response came faster than I expected. My husband called me that evening from a number I did not recognize, initiating one last private coercion before the next hearing. You really want to go to war over this Aurora? Fine. I just had my brother send copies of those emails to your entire team. They all know now. How long do you think they will keep you around once they see what a mess you are? Come home tonight. Drop the claims. My father already prepared the paperwork to make everything go away quietly. His voice stayed soft, almost loving, but the threat was vicious. Or keep fighting and watch how fast you end up with nothing. No job, no money, no one who believes you. That is what happens when you try to take autonomy from someone who actually knows what is best for you. I hung up without replying. The next 2 weeks were a grinding battle of motions and counter-motions. My husband showed up to every session, flanked by his parents, initiating fresh attacks each time with new evidence of my instability. A therapist my mother-in-law had referred testified on his behalf, painting me as someone who needed protection. The lawyer fought hard, but the judge granted only partial relief. The conservatorship was denied, but the joint accounts stayed frozen pending full divorce proceedings. My husband walked out of the final hearing with that same triumphant smile and delivered one last jab in the parking lot where only I could hear it. You got your precious boundaries, Aurora. Enjoy them. My mother and I will make sure everyone knows exactly why our marriage fell apart. Good luck explaining that to your next boss. I moved into a small studio apartment on the north side of Milwaukee the following weekend. Willow helped me carry the boxes, but even she looked exhausted. You did the right thing, she said as she hugged me goodbye, but he is not going to stop talking. Be careful. She was right. Within a month, my husband had spread the story through our mutual circles. My boss called me in for a meeting and said the client had requested a different lead after hearing rumors about personal instability. I kept the job, but the promotion vanished. My phone stayed quiet except for the occasional text from my brother-in-law reminding me that my husband was still willing to forgive if I dropped the divorce. I did not. I filed the papers myself and set the firmest boundary I had ever drawn. No contact, no shared accounts, no explanations. The court granted the divorce 6 months later, with minimal assets divided because most everything had been tied up in his name. I walked away with my clothes, my car, and enough savings to cover 3 months of rent. Nothing more. My husband never fought the final decree. He did not need to. He had already won the narrative. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my mother-in-law told everyone at their church I had abandoned him in his time of need. My father-in-law stopped acknowledging me completely. Even Willow pulled back after a while, saying the drama was affecting her own work life. I did not blame her. The isolation settled in slowly, like fog I could not clear. I still go to work every day. I still pay my bills. I still wake up alone in that small studio and make coffee for one. Some nights I stare at the ceiling and wonder if setting those boundaries cost me more than I realized. My husband kept the house, the savings, the family network. I kept my autonomy and the heavy silence that came with it. There is no dramatic revenge. There is no satisfying moment where he apologizes or his lies catch up to him in some public way. He simply moved on, initiating new control with someone else while I learned to live with the loneliness that boundaries sometimes bring. I chose myself. And in the end, that choice left me standing alone in a city that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. Thank you for listening to my story. It still feels raw telling it, but maybe someone out there is sitting in their own version of this right now. If you ever had to walk away from someone who made you doubt your own mind just to keep your sanity, what did that isolation feel like for you? Drop it in the comments. I read every one.